Welcome to the April 21st, 2025 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Blake Cameron, and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. Next on the agenda is roll call. Director Sharp, will you please call roll?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Ankeny. Here. Commissioner Planton. Here. Commissioner Schwalbe. Here. Commissioner Severson.
Here.
Commissioner Elg.
Here.
Commissioner Vanaway.
Here.
Chair Cameron.
Here. Thank you. Next on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the meeting minutes from April 7th, 2025, and approval of the Planning Commission report and recommendation for denial for a conditional use permit at 701 Central Avenue North. Does anybody have any questions or proposed changes to the agenda?
No.
Perfect. If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved, Severson.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson.
Second, Ankeny.
Thank you, Commissioner Ankeny. Further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Next on the agenda tonight, since we don't have any old business, we'll move right to public hearing, is the development application for conditional use permit and design deviation for 1221 Wayzata Boulevard East, which is better known as... For what?
Chair, I think
Did I skip past that?
you
I thought we just did that.
approved the agenda for the evening, and the next thing on the agenda is the
Oh,
consent.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was a little misleading, I think.
I know, no, that's all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Sorry, I was one further down on this, so that's my bad. Does anybody have any, commissioners, does anybody have any comments, questions, or want to pull any items for further discussion on the consent agenda, which is the meeting minutes from April 7th and the report and recommendation for denial for conditional use permit at 701 Central Avenue? No. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Planton.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton.
I'll
Second.
second it, Van Loy.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion passes and the consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is the public hearing this evening. The first item for public hearing is the 1221 Wayzata Boulevard, better known as the Retreat, and I believe we are going to, so we're going to do this with city presentation, and then we'll have some time for questions from the commission, then we'll hear from the applicant, and we'll have some discussion as a commission, and then we'll have a public hearing as well, and then close that and bring it back. So we're going to hear from the city first. I believe that's Planner Zweber.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. As you stated, this is the, the retreat at 1221 Wayzata Boulevard East. This is probably a familiar property to a lot of people at the city, but when you drive by, basically all you see is a sign there on Wayzata Boulevard, but it is located in between the big woods. And then kind of behind the Holiday and Car Wash along Wayzata Boulevard. The property is zoned institutional, and it is also guided for institutional public. Here's an overview. You can see that we have the big woods on both sides. We have Colonial Square to the west. We have the other commercial along Wayzata Boulevard to the south, and then to the north and east, we have Highway 12. This is the view from the street. Again, pretty much what you see is that sign located at its entrance. They do have a secondary entrance from behind the Holiday gas station. Their request tonight is for two actions. First, they have an existing conditional use, and they're asking to amend that to upgrade the men's wing on the north side of the property. So the image below is basically looking from the north to the south. that middle wing there is what will be replaced. And then the design deviation for mechanical equipment be located on the roof. And you can see on the north side, they have the gabled roof, and then kind of in the middle, there's the flat section that will have the mechanical equipment itself. So the previous approvals for the retreat, first back in 2003, there was a conditional use permit issued. There are 2 buildings on the site, so they had 70 residents in the main building, 10 in the sober living residence, which is on the east side. In 2006, they came in and demolished the sober living residence and replaced it. And then at that time, it was the same 80 residents maximum. So in 2018, they did a demolition of the women's recovery wing, which is on the south side of the building, and then increased the occupancy to 91 residents. They are not asking for an increase in residents. This is completely a remodel, keeping the same amount of beds that they're removing. So the property has this 37,000 square foot main building and a separate 2-story building on the east side. You can see the building on the east side highlighted in green. The existing building is highlighted in yellow, and then the red outline is the wing that will be demolished and reconstructed. The site itself is 7.44 acres in size, and it is surrounded by the big woods, including a easement, or Minnesota Land Trust has an easement over the property as well. So this is the site plan of the entire property. You can see the main entrance is off of Wayzata Boulevard. The area in white are the areas that are being remodeled, and then you can see the road heading to the east, or the trail heading to the east that goes to that second sober living building. So the site plan itself, it's installing a new 3-story walkout building. There is some addition to the existing building itself to make it from a 2-story to a 3-story. And then there's a deck and a patio addition as well. So the setbacks for the institutional zoning district are 50 feet for all setbacks, front, side, and rear. They're proposing the new building to be 90.8 feet away from the property line, and then you see the existing building conforms to those standards as well. The institutional zoning district allows 3 stories and 40 feet, whichever is less. Their proposal is a 3-story addition that would measure out to be 36 feet 7 inches. So the conditional use permit is for the changes and alterations to the building. As I stated earlier, they are not expanding the number of people. They are changing some uses within the building itself. There is the conservation easement that is city-owned property and protected by the conservation easement from the Minnesota Land Trust. The applicant has been communicating with the Minnesota Land Trust, and they have provided a letter of conditional approval that was included in your packet. Parking, they're proposing no changes to the parking. They are not proposing any changes to the number of residents. It happens to be there are 47 off-street parking stalls located to the west of the main building, and there's another 5 parking stalls adjacent to the sober living residence for a total of 52 stalls. Our city code does not have a standard for a recovery space, so this was discussed previously, particularly in that expansion to 91 residents, that the retreat had provided a parking analysis showing that there was adequate parking. We do not receive complaints about lack of parking at this particular property. Tree and landscaping plan, they are removing 2 trees, but to allow for access for the construction. But neither the trees are neither significant or heritage trees, so there is no replacement required. They are proposing to add 3 new red maple trees, which are shown on the top exhibit, kind of surrounding the addition. And we did talk with the applicant because the image on the bottom is basically using the access behind the Holiday gas station. And it's a pretty long access, but we did work with the applicant to look at what the impact would be if it came from the west parking lot off of Wayzata Boulevard. And it would be a much greater impact on the trees in that area if we would have came from the west. So staff does support coming from the east. So that was a conditional use permit. Regarding the design deviation, this property happens to be located in the Bluff District because it is an institutionally zoned property. And in the Bluff District, there's not allowed mechanical equipment on the roof deck. So they are asking for the deviation to allow that rooftop mechanical. And then next, we'll go through the neighborhood notifications, but talk about some of the standards for those. So we did publish the public hearing back on April 10th, and on that same day, both the city sent out a letter and the architect for the retreat sent out a letter to the neighborhoods notifying of this activity as well. This is, we still have not received any public comments on this application. The engineer has reviewed this and has no comments regarding the CUP amendment. Following the CUP and design deviation approval, should that happen, the city engineer would review the building permit submittal for additional comment. Very similar for the city forester. They looked at the plans, seen that no significant or heritage trees are removed, and also worked to make sure that this is the least impactful construction access for this particular development. So some of the primary questions to consider for the conditional use permit would be, is this proposal compatible with the present and future use of the area? Is the proposed use, does it have an impact on the area in which it's proposed? And does it have an impact on the property values in the area in which it is developed? For the design deviation, it's a slightly different way to evaluate. I know that the city attorney has discussed this before, but it's basically that if the benefit of granting this outweighs any negative impacts, you can approve this design deviation. So a couple of the key considerations is, does this proposal advance the specific policies in the comprehensive plan? Does this proposed use, particularly the rooftop mechanical, have an effect on the area it's proposed? And then we do have within the provisions of reviewing a design deviation to be able to look at the existing building in the case of a remodel to see if the project is, conforms with the existing building. And as those images showed early, and I know the applicant's going to talk about it, the new remodeled wing will look like the other wings for the proposed development. So with that, you can ask any clarifying questions of myself. Following that, the applicant will give their presentation. Then the commission would be able to ask questions of the applicant, have the public hearing, and then finally discussions and your ultimate decision. And then this would be the recommendation that after considering the items, that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare a draft report and recommendation. So with that, I would stand for any questions you would have.
Commissioner Severson.
Okay.
Can you, I have two questions. You said it was on the tree slide, you said coming in from the east. Can you just clarify, did you mean you were talking about construction access?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, so they will be using that driveway for construction access?
Right.
Do they need to get any kind of approval from Holiday to do that?
No, there is an existing easement in that area.
Okay. And then regarding the mechanical equipment, where is it today?
They have both some on the ground and they also have some rooftop.
And was that rooftop, was that approved through a CUP prior?
We updated our design standards to exclude that in the Bluff District, I think it was 2021.
Okay.
So it's basically illegal non-conforming use now.
Okay.
Changed the standards.
Yes.
Okay, so by putting the mechanical on the top of this building, how much additional feet will that add to the height of the building?
So it actually will be below the peak of the roof. So let's see if I can get oops, I didn't want to do that. I thought there was a pointer, which I know on your screen, but it's in the middle here behind the gable roofs. So it's not actually,
That like flat area?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't add to the height of the building because the gables are in front of it, basically screening it from most sides. If you were standing kind of between the two wings, you might be able to see it.
Where is it today? The whatever mechanical equipment is up there?
I believe it's on the second story. They are doing a third story location in that area, but I'll let the applicant explain that in more detail.
And none of that can be seen from the road or,
Yeah, from the adjacent properties or the road, no.
the only other comment that I wanted to make was I always appreciate the degree to which the city looks after every single tree we have. And looks like you really did that this time too. Looked at every single tree is important, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ankeny?
I just have a quick question on the mechanicals. If we approve this, does this set a precedent going forward?
Commissioner, in a case like this, no, I do not believe that it would. Precedent is difficult to prove in the best of cases because each case is unique in and of itself, and this one is particularly unique.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right.
Could I
Absolutely.
expand? It's not necessarily in the precedents, but part of the uniqueness of this property is its address and its access is off of Wayzata Boulevard, but it's not part of the Wayzata Boulevard Design District. If this was in the Wayzata Boulevard Design District, rooftop mechanicals are allowed. So properties to the south, properties to the west are allowed to have rooftop mechanical.
But because it's an institutional, it's been categorized as Bluff District.
Correct, because it's institutional, it's categorized as bluff.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, staff. Thank you, Planners Weber. Next, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward and give us a presentation. Please state your name and address for the record and your role if you're an advisor or other part of the applicant's team.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Eric Reiners. I'm a principal and managing partner at SRA. We're both happy and proud to have been the design partner for the retreat for more than 20 years now. And we have been part of every project out there, small and large. And we've conducted each of the major projects, renovations, additions, with extreme care and consideration for the easements under which we have to operate. And this particular project is no different. We started actually back in 2019, shortly after we finished the women's wing replacement project. And it was late in '21 when we got our preliminary design approval from the Land Trust on this particular project, and then actually received administrative approval from staff in 2022 for this project. The project then proceeded through some fundraising, and when we finally got ready to get to this point, some ordinance had changed in the language of this Bluff District site, requiring that or stating that we couldn't put the mechanicals on the roof. So here we are tonight to walk through it one more time. Previously, they were substantially on the ground, or are today on the ground on the north side of that wing with ductwork on the exterior of the building, crawling up and inside. So the visuals for that particular component under our new design will be much better for those that actually can see that part of the site, or walking through the big woods, perhaps looking south toward the building. These new mechanicals will be completely concealed behind the raised pitched roof structure. So other than that, if you have any other specific questions, I'd love to address them. Mr. Curtis is here also tonight, president at the retreat, and I'm sure he'd like to say a few words.
Hi, I'm John Curtis. I'm the president of the retreat, and thank you for considering this alteration in the conditional use permit. You know, we've been on this property for 22 years now. It's hard to believe, frankly. We've had 33,000 people go through the retreat and find the road to recovery, families, women, men, from all around the world. So it's been an amazing opportunity for us. It's saving a lot of lives. You know, when we moved into the property, you know, when the nuns built the property in 1950, they weren't thinking about accessibility. And, you know, one of the challenges for us, and I knew when we built the $10 million Center for Women's Recovery, that eventually the men are going to want a new building too. So, so here we are. It is, for us, you know, an opportunity to bring the whole facility up to full handicap accessibility and elevators on both sides, for the men's side, the women's side, and just modernize the facility. And our commitment has always been, for every project we've done, to maintain the architectural integrity of the building itself, to make it look like it's always been there. And, you know, it maintains that kind of English Tudor look everywhere you look. And I think Eric has done an amazing job, and his team, on just designing a facility that enhances the property. So we're here to answer any questions you have, and thank you again for considering this.
Cool. Thank you, John. Thank you, Eric. Commissioners, questions?
I just have one question. If you would actually take the mechanicals and do the work to put them down, wouldn't that also mean that you would actually have to take more land and get an additional agreement with the land trust?
You're exactly right. One of the easements is a limitation on footprint area. And so taking them off the ground where they are today and peeling that ductwork off the exterior of the building, internalizing all that, is not only an aesthetic improvement, but also saves surface area for the project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a comment that thank you for keeping the architectural integrity of the building. I think it's such a nice building. When you approach it, it really is nice having it set into the woods. And again, your commitment to our community and all that you do for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Eric, for you, just kind of in Commissioner Van Looy's vein. So the intent is to put everything up on the roof, mechanical-wise?
The primary air handling components, yes, for heating and cooling will be on the roof. And it's virtually the same as we did for the women's wing to the west. Again, at that time, as Planner Weber pointed out, that was not an issue. It was a language change in 21 or 22 that imparts that requirement. But yes, it's primarily heating and air conditioning.
Okay.
On the roof.
And then a question for you, and Commissioner Stevenson kind of raised it, got me thinking about it a little bit. I'm not sure that it's like super material, but we were talking about construction traffic here. And it sounds like you guys want to route all the construction traffic through behind Holiday.
That is correct.
And I just know, like, every time I go in there, it's like if you're trying to get food at Chipotle or Punch or gas at Holiday or a car wash, it's like always a zoo in there, so.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the impacts that going the other way would have?
So are you talking about when you say the other way on the west side?
Using the west driveway, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a significantly higher tree count to the west between the existing structure and the shopping center. And the land, believe it or not, is actually slightly lower. And we had some soft soils areas. So there would have been temporary road construction and site clearing that far exceeded the route we could create from the east.
Understand, all right, yeah, I was just kind of like trying to think about, right, like, are there other options,
Yeah,
right?
of
Just
course.
minimizing impact in a busy area.
Yeah, believe me, we looked at it all very carefully.
Excellent.
Yes.
Is that one more question? I think if I remember when I read through your application correctly, it sounds like from many vantage points, the peaks would hide this, and where the peaks don't hide it, there's screening of some sort on the roof.
That is correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any follow-up questions for the applicant or staff?
I'm just curious, are most of the people here in support of the retreat? Okay, thank you.
Question answered. All right, well, if we don't have any questions for the applicant or staff, let's open the public hearing. So thank you, gentlemen, Eric and John.
Thank you.
We will, just quick kind of point, right? This is our time to listen to the community. If the community has thoughts and comments, it's a really important part of the process, as we've experienced with some of our other ones. So any questions that come up during the public hearing will be held till the end and may be addressed at staff or the applicant at that point. So with that said, I will call the public hearing. Open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the podium. State your name and address for the record and let us know if you're connected to the applicant in any way or representing anyone else. Cool. Best part, right? All right.
All in favor?
All in favor, right? Director Sharp, do we have anybody with any questions online?
Chair, we do not have anyone in attendance on the virtual meeting.
Perfect. All right.
No one?
Well, going once, twice. All right. I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant at this point that we haven't come through so far?
No.
Any thoughts on the project that anybody wants to share?
I would say it's a very thoughtful application. I appreciate looking at the two different ways you could come into the property, the tree preservation, the screening of the mechanicals, the architectural integrity is there with the building. I think it's a very thoughtful application.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just say I would agree. And I just really appreciate the retreat being in our community and what you're doing for all of the folks who very much need this. It's a beautiful building, it's a beautiful property, and what a lovely way to enhance our community, so thank you. And I think the application itself, as Commissioner Planton mentioned, is very thoughtful. Moving the mechanical equipment up to the roof, I think, makes sense. It's what happened with the other building they did just a few years prior that unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for them, didn't have to go through this process. but it doesn't sound like it's that significantly different, so I think it makes sense from an application standpoint, and I think it's a appropriate use of a conditional use permit.
Cool. I think I would echo your comments, and I think from the application perspective, I love that you guys have stayed true to the design that's there today, making it fit in, right? What's new is old, what's old is new. So from a conditional use permit, I think I have no issues with that. And from a design deviation, I think it makes all sorts of sense to have it on the roof, especially deep in the woods where it is. Nobody's going to see it, so I don't know that it's really a terribly large concern, so.
Agreed.
Sounds like maybe we have some direction then.
Shall I make a motion?
Sure.
Okay. So I would make a motion to, that the planning commission would like to direct staff to prepare a draft recommendation, planning commission report and recommendation with appropriate findings reflecting recommendation of approval for the application for review and adoption at our next commission meeting.
Thank you,
Did I do
Commissioner.
that right?
Commissioner Severson. May I have a second?
I second Schwalbe.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe. Any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The ayes have it, the motion passes. The draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda in our next meeting. After adoption, we'll go to City Council for their consideration. Thank you all for your turnout and your support this evening and for everything that you do for our community. The next item on our agenda is the consideration for the development application for a variance at 617 Park Street. And we'll just give them like 30 seconds here to clear out. And then we're going to hear again from Planner Weber with the city's presentation and then the applicant, and follow the same process we just did. Planner
Here, I'll
Weber.
just give them a second.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. This is a request at 617 Park Street East. The house is actually under construction. The building permit was issued, and this eve variance was not identified at the time of the building permit issuance. So Custom One Homes, on behalf of the owners, are requesting an eve variance that I'll go into detail about here soon. So this property is located on Park Street. Maybe I'll just start with the property directions. This part of town is a little askew from, traditional north and south. I'm going to refer to Park Street as the south side of the lot, the rear lot being north, and then east and west being the two neighbors. But this property is located between Walker and Broadway on the north side of Park Street. This is in the area of town that's zoned R3A, single and two family residential district. And in our comprehensive plan is referred to as our central core residential. So again, this is the property on Park Street to the south, Gardner on the north end of the block, but this particular lot does not go all the way to Gardner, Walker to the west and Broadway to the east. I included this second photo to the right there because that's the original plat. So you could see this is a little larger lot than most. The lots directly to the east are that old lot, which were, I think it's 66 feet wide. This one took a little bit of the lots to the west to create this lot size, so a little larger than the other lots. This, I guess we're calling the existing conditions, but this is the old house that had been removed, and now the new house is under construction in this particular area. Part of why I did want this photo is There are 3 trees there to the south and west. They did do this design to save 2 of the 3 trees. And so when we go through the setbacks, the proposed house is at the minimum setback of 10 feet from that east property line. So they submitted the survey showing the 10 feet, but then in their building plans, they show that their eaves are 3 foot 6 inches in depth. The city code says that an eave can encroach into a required setback up to 2.5 feet. So since this is at that east setback line and it's 3 feet 6 inches, they're requesting for a 1 foot variance to allow that to encroach 3 foot 6 into the side yard. So looking at where they proposed their building, you could see that the front setback for R3A is 20 feet, the side setbacks are 10 feet, and the rear setback's 20 feet. Their proposed building is actually set 30 feet off of the front, so none of the eave encroaches into the front yard setback because of that additional 10 feet. To the east, we just talked about, that's right at this 10-foot setback line, and since it's 3.5 feet, it's a 1 foot variance request. To the west, it is located 12 feet from the west property line, 2 feet more than what's required. So that eave does encroach, but less than the 2.5 that it's allowed. And then due to the setback to the north, there's no eave encroachment. So again, while there's an eave encroachment to the west, that is allowed by code up to 2.5 feet. It's the east where the variance request of an additional foot. Engineering department has reviewed this and has no comments on the proposal. We did have this published in the paper on April 10th. We also sent out, our letter, and the applicant sent out their letter also on the 10th. There is no neighborhood required for a variance meeting, so that letter was sufficient. We've actually received a second comment since I prepared this presentation. So there's 2 public comments at your desk, one in support and one in opposition of the request. So a couple of the questions to consider when you're reviewing variances, and in this case, you need to find all of these conditions are met. Is this proposal consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is the variance reasonable? Is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances that are unique to the property? And then a little statement there about this being quasi-judicial, so it's looking at the code and applying that code. And then finally, after conducting the public hearing and hearing from the applicant, you can make a recommendation to draft a planning commissioner report or recommendation for our next meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
I have one question. So they went through the process to get the building permit. Was it an oversight? Or during the building process, did the trusses come different? Get a little insight into why we seem to be doing this in the opposite order.
It is an oversight. Neither Alex or I reviewed this plan for the building permit, so it's a little hard to guess. Looking at what happened with this one, the eaves are not on the survey where the setbacks are. The eaves are in the building plan, so you're required to take, the 2 separate sheets and kind of do the math. Should have been done, it wasn't.
Okay. So they have a building permit in hand, right?
Yep.
So if a variance isn't granted and they have a building permit, what's the remedy? I mean, do they have to rip it off and redo it, or because they have a permit in hand, can they continue to build?
They cannot continue without the approval of this variance. They would have to modify it to meet the 2.5 foot eve encroachment. which would be only on the east side.
So was this encroachment discovered when people came out to make sure everything was copacetic with the city, came and measured, a building
Commissioner
inspector
Schwalbe, it
came?
was actually one of the neighbors that called and asked about it, and that's when we re-reviewed and confirmed that this was
The neighbor was
improperly issued.
concerned that it was encroaching too far toward him.
I'm not sure exactly which neighbor it was, but
Okay.
it is encroaching particularly to the property owner to the east.
Okay, and is it 1 foot over or 1.5 feet over? Because I thought, when I first read it, for some reason, I have 1.5 feet in my mind.
So you're allowed to encroach 2 feet 6 inches, 2.5 feet. The eve is 3.5 feet, so subtracting the 2.5 from the 3.5 makes the 1 foot
1 foot.
variance.
Okay. And in order to fix that, we should talk to the applicant.
Yep.
Okay.
So, oh, go ahead.
Go, no, you go.
Nope. I'll go, okay. So you said the eaves aren't on the survey, they're on the building plan, and so you have to do the math in order to figure out that. Who does the math? Is that the city?
Yes,
So the city didn't do the math in this instance?
it appears so, yep.
Okay, so this is on the city, not on the builder?
I don't know that the code would say that. The builder is required to submit code-compliant plans. We should have caught it, but it doesn't change the fact that the plans should comply with the city code.
Just out of curiosity, do we know what the setback of the current building to the east is on their home? From,
I don't know. I mean,
no,
it appears that the setback is 10 feet, but I don't know the width of their eaves. I don't know how far their eaves are encroaching. But you can see on that drawing where the existing house line is, and it seems
I see.
pretty close to the same equal distance as what this one's proposed. But we don't have the eaves on the house to the east.
Commissioner Ankeny, did you have a question?
You said you had a third letter?
A second.
A second?
In my presentation, I said we had only received one
Oh,
letter
oh, okay.
by the time.
I just
So
didn't know.
I apologize if I said.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Sure. Commissioner Schwalbe?
So are there going to be gutters on these eaves? Or is there any concern about runoff onto the neighbor's property, onto their building? Are there going to be gutters?
I don't know that answer. We don't require that they show gutters on the building plans. And the house is still under construction, so I don't know that answer.
Okay,
We could ask the applicant.
we'll ask them, okay.
How much under construction?
The roof has, so the exterior is wrapped, I guess you'd say. The roof has sheeting on it, the shingle, or at least last week when I drove by, the shingles were not on, but the roof sheeting and whatever the equivalent nowadays of tar paper is on the roof.
I know in the packet there was a rendering of image of the home being built. Do you have that in the presentation at all, or
I do not.
what, I don't recall, what, on this east side of the building, what are we seeing? Is that where the garage is? Is that,
Yes, so the building plans, it's a two-story building, but it's not a two-story all the way out to the, kind of the edge of the outside walls. So it's almost like it's 3 pods. There's 2 pods on the side. First one's the garage, and then it bumps in a little bit where the second story is, and then it bumps back out for some living space. So the eave on that east side is both the garage in front and then living space behind that.
Oh, I see, okay.
So if you look at this, is it both the eave that is right above the garage door and the second tier, are both of those encroaching?
On the plans, yes.
Okay.
Both the garage and the living space behind it have a 3-foot 6-inch, eave shown on the plans. This one's a little harder to see because our code allows cantilevers to extend out into that encroachment as well. So if you're looking at the garage, there's kind of on the far east side, it would look like lap siding, horizontal lines. That's an encroachment that cantilevers over. It's where there's kind of the stone next to the garage and then goes up to, I don't know what that material is above it. That's the 10-foot setback, and so that's the eave that extends 3'6" from that line. But their cantilever is shown on their survey and is allowed per city code.
Thank you.
Anyone else, commissioners? No. All right. Thank you, Planner Zober. I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward now. I can speak tonight. Please state your name and address for the record and your role with the project.
Sure. Good evening. Todd Polifka, President Custom One, 5097 Wood Lane, Alcove, Woodbury, Minnesota. Thank you for hearing this and appreciate your time tonight.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we have a permanent survey and the construction of the home started, and then we were notified that we have this eave concern that's a foot into the setback. No intention. We were surprised as well. So that's kind of where we're at, and now we're trying to figure out what do we do next. So variance was applied for, sent out all the notices, followed the process and procedures. Just want to make sure we're doing what we need to do as a good steward, obviously in the city of Wayzata.
Cool. Thank you. Commissioners, question for the applicant.
Yeah, I have a question. So if you had to correct this, what would be your approach and what would the impact be to time, cost, whatever? Just give us a little idea of the impact.
Sure. Right now, the house has mechanical rough-ins, electrical rough-ins completed. All the windows are in. All the roof trusses are on. All the sheathing's on. All the underlayment is on. We have paused construction on the roof as far as installing shingles. So to make any recommendation or remedy to it, we'd have to do some engineering course correction on everything that's been installed from mechanicals, electrical, the framing on the roof, underlayment, substantial cost, let alone the aesthetic impact for the client and the city as well. It will definitely look not correct and not something that somebody would desire.
Thank you.
So our question to staff a little bit ago was, what happened? So, and the answer is, the plans that were submitted were non-compliant plans, and then the city did not review those. So can you talk about your part there of not submitting compliant plans? What happened?
Yeah, so we turned in the survey, we turned in the plans. As you saw, the eaves were noted. Things are on there. I'm not really sure what happened as far as how that didn't get caught on all fronts. But that's kind of where we're at. And, again, there was no intent to that. There was no malice. Just trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and, everything fit at the time, and things were signed off, and we moved forward and started building. So, yeah, and, majority of municipalities is you're worried about the foundation and where that fits in the setback, and we're compliant with all that. The difference is the size of the eaves on this home.
Are they bigger than normal?
I wouldn't say for the scale of the home, no. Is it less typical than a standard build? Yes. But it's, the last thing I'd say that is aesthetically in balance to the home. It's very good. It's very well done.
Commissioner Planton? Sorry, not Planton. Schwalbe. Schwalbe first.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to that question about the eve and the runoff and gutters and impact to any neighboring lots. What are you intending to do there?
Yeah, as of now, there's no intent to put gutters on there. We'd be open to that conversation, open to the discussion, of course. We don't see any concern with that. We don't see any concern with runoff from the overall square footage of the roof line. The one concern is with having trees in a wooded lot is putting gutters on it and then having things come into that gutter and creating.
Yeah, but there's no trees around the actual house there.
Yeah, there's some trees. It's not heavily wooded, but.
In the back, you mean behind?
Yep. Both sides.
Yeah, but the encroachment just is occurring on one side. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
East side, okay.
Yep. That's correct.
So if it were to be determined that this should be remedied, it seems like taking a foot off wouldn't be that horrible of a thing. I mean, I know you can't just take a chainsaw to it, but do you actually have all kinds of electrical and ducts and everything running through that 1 foot area? I mean, it's the eave. There can't be something there, right? It's just a hangover.
Yeah, I think that the bigger concern is the imbalance to the property, the imbalance that it looks to the neighborhood, and the concern of remedying that from an engineering standpoint, a structure standpoint, and just the cost to do that.
Okay, well, you're saying to the look of the neighborhood, but it's a pretty big house on that lot, and seems to be taking about all of it up that it can, side to side. I think the architecture is actually very pretty. I drove by it. I like the look of it. It's beautiful. But I am concerned about that foot. I mean, maybe you have to do it on both sides in order to make it equal. Anyway, those are my thoughts at this moment. What would you like to say, dear?
I think you answered some of my question. I was just going to ask about the engineering of the trusses and what you would have to do to the roof trusses, just on that one side. It is quite close to a bigger two-story home. I don't know if walking in the neighborhood or even driving through, you would sense an instability from one side to the other. The overhangs are much, the eaves are deeper than any of the surrounding homes. It's a style that's not consistent in that neighborhood. So what would you do if you had to take off 1 foot? Is it completely re-engineering the roof line on that side?
It's actually on two sides of the home. You'd have to wrap that around to the rear of the home as well. So
On that back part?
yeah, so you're going to have some imbalance, a big imbalance of that east side and also the north side of that lot.
The back.
Yeah,
That'd be the four-season porch area, that part?
Is it,
it's close to that area, yeah. Wrapping around.
so
It's
the
a, it's a significant change.
I have a question. So one of these construction sets that you have, I don't know how I name it, A01, does that, yeah, A01, can we come to that one? So the one above that, nope, there. Nope, not that one, next one. Yep, so from that angle, that eaves looks like a pretty dramatic eave. It looks, well, maybe it's just from the angle, but it looks quite a bit bigger than the one that's on the west side. Am I right?
They're the same size, but if you, yeah, the view of it makes it, it gives it that illusion.
Yeah.
So if you look at the next,
Can you see how from other constructions you've done, that's a big roof for runoff, that could be a concern for a neighbor?
yeah, there's all kinds of ways to mitigate that. But as far as the way the lot is drained and the way it handles water, that should be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, anyone else? All right, thank you, Todd. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I would like to turn now to the public hearing for this part. So, and note again that any questions that are asked during the public hearing will be held till the end and addressed at that point. With that said, I will open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Director Sharp, do we have anybody online?
We have a fellow right here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Chair, not at this time.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was giving you time. Please.
My name's Gareth Goodall. I live in the property to the east of this one, 627 Park Street East. I can't bring it within myself to object to these plans because I want to be a good neighbour to our future neighbours. This is where I want to raise my family, and we want to stay here for a very long time. I will say that it's hard to not want to object because I'm very frustrated to be here and that we are here. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that this wasn't checked. I wasn't going to bring up the city's part in this, but having heard this, and even the house is 2 blocks away, you could have a photo in your presentation of what it currently looks like, which would give a more accurate depiction. But anyway, it's frustrating that this was missed at the planning permission stage. But I would say I'm particularly frustrated with the building company. This is the widest lot in our block. 2 of the 3 trees were saved, but the 3rd one that was taken down was on this side to make the house wider, and it seemingly still wasn't enough in terms of width. And frankly, the bit that means that whilst I will not object to this and will happily agree to it being passed, I have to speak for my own self-respect when we received this letter from Custom One Homes talking about how the impact to the neighbouring homes, as in mine, was negligible, talking about how due diligence was done to research other ways to bring the structure back into compliance when there's been no pause in the construction of the roof, other than maybe but no pause that I could see in terms of any of the work that's now being said is too late to turn back, and talking about the diminishment to the curb appeal of the home, with no regard to the curb appeal of our home or what these properties look like close together. I will say on that front, I'm not an expert in runoff or drainage. I would be against gutters as an addition, just because anything that further brings the houses looking like they're closer together would not be something that I would wish. So, as I say, for my own integrity, I feel that I wanted to say these things. I'm disappointed that this has happened. I think it is on you to submit plans that submit with the things. I think you owe that to your client too. But I won't be objecting to the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and pull the discussion back into the commissioners. Commissioners, anybody have any questions for the applicant or staff before we discuss?
I did have one other question for
Yes, Commissioner Severson.
So I recall, was it last fall that there was a moratorium on any new building and construction in this neighborhood? What happened with that?
There was excuse me, a moratorium brought forward to the city council, but did not pass.
Didn't, okay.
We did the zoning study anyways,
Yeah.
but the moratorium itself did not pass.
So that never happened, okay. Maybe I should read my city email.
Anyone else? Questions for staff or the applicant? All right, thoughts? Anyone want to lead us off?
I have some comments. I've walked by there many times, and it is one of the wider lots, and the house did not have to go to all the way. I don't understand why your plans weren't compliant. You're compliant with the foundation, but I just don't, when I look at the considerations here for our approving a variance, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan to have a charming, walkable neighborhood? I think it's out of place in the neighborhood. I don't see the hardship that we use to grant a variance, other than now the mediation is what the hardship is. And usually we grant a variance, because there is a hardship. Is it the plight of the landowner? No, it wasn't originally. The plans weren't built to be conformed. So I have a hard time with this. It does encroach into the neighbors. I think it's unfortunate that the remediation might be difficult. I wish it could have been worked out with the neighbor, maybe in some way, before it got too far along. I don't know how far along it went, but I don't feel like it's a unique hardship to the lot. I don't think it's consistent with our comprehensive plan, and so I don't feel like it's unique to the property or reasonable. It's unfortunate.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton.
Well, it seems reasonable to me that a builder would know that the eaves are going to go onto the building, and that should not have been a surprise to the builder. At the same time, I really feel for the neighbor to the east who doesn't want to get off on the wrong foot with brand-new neighbors. You can tell that it's very disturbing to him that this is happening, but he really feels the closeness of that building, and every inch counts, every foot counts. I would like to see the builder make an attempt to remedy this and get it fixed. I would like to see what they could do to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwalbe.
I would have to agree with Commissioner Planton that the variance, I feel like, is due to the fact that we're here. Unfortunately, they used every single inch of that lot, and it still wasn't enough. And I feel like that, I don't feel like that should be a variance at that point. You have a brand-new lot, so there aren't other circumstances, or it doesn't narrow in certain areas. There aren't other things happening on this property. It's brand-new, complete tear down. I feel like in that case, you gotta have your house fitting into the size of the lot and give yourself a buffer. You didn't give yourself any inches of buffering, and so I don't feel like that's on the city to remedy.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson.
I would agree. I think answering number 3 is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property. I don't think I can say yes to that, to answer these questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Ankeny.
It's an interesting question, because I was thinking about being in their shoes. It's really not the landowner that had much to do with this, right? It's first the builder who, although the landowner understood that they were using every inch of the property to try to put their house on, and had a plan that did that. But first the first the builder somehow made a mistake or didn't put in plans that complied with code, and then the process didn't catch it on the city side. Having said that, I also know that, all the trusses and stuff today aren't just built stick on site, right? They are ordered ahead of time and are brought in, and the re-engineering associated with that would not be insignificant.
Very sympathetic to that.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
not a good situation to be in.
Commissioner Van Loy, I find myself agreeing with a lot of what you said, right? I think mistakes were made here on both sides. I think there's some, the builder and the designer, I think, have to own the fact that they submitted non-compliant plans, right? That's on you guys. And some of it's on the city too for them not catching that. And I think that puts, ultimately the landowner, right, in a weird spot because, they're, right, this is all being done on their behalf, but not by them, through their agents, right? And then I think it puts their neighbors in awkward spots as well. I think it's a weird part. I think it was Commissioner Planton, maybe it was you, Bonnie, Commissioner Schwalbe, sorry. But somebody was talking about the width of the building. And I noted when we were going through the presentation that the setback in the back is 73 feet. So there's a significant amount of space behind the building where they could have gone back instead of pushing the boundaries all the way out to the sides and making a very wide building. They had the option existed to go deeper into the lot and have the same footprint for the building in terms of square footage. Right, obviously design-wise, architecturally, that's going to look different. But it's not like they've taken up the entire space, buildable space. So I think it's tough, right? I think, again, mistakes were made on both sides, and I think it's awkward for everybody.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where I can't answer yes to any of those three questions. At the same time, you're recognizing the significant expense required in making these changes, and it's going to delay the homeowner getting in their home. But we don't have an option of just saying, yes, you get the variance because it's an awkward situation and mistakes were made. It still remains, we cannot say yes to any of those three questions, and that's the bottom line. And that's what we have to use as our guidance when we are considering this request. And wow, it's a bad place, but I can't say yes to any of those.
I think we have, Commissioner Elgay, I hear what you're saying. I think we've got some latitude too, right? Like, I'm hearing from the property owner to the east, right? He put it succinctly, he doesn't want to get off on a bad foot, and, he sort of like begrudgingly, right, is approving of it. So I think we at least have some latitude to make a decision one way or the other based on common sense too. I think you're right. Could be considerable cost for somebody in this equation if we said, if it came down to no, you've got to pull your overhang back a foot.
I guess I'm interested to know, where is that latitude? I would want to be like the homeowner next door. I wouldn't want to get off on the wrong foot, and I don't want the city to get off on the wrong foot here either.
Right.
Alienating this builder, pissing off the resident, so where do we have latitude, if any? Because I'm inclined to say, hey, we have to recognize the city's error as well here. We have to acknowledge it, And is that sufficient enough that we can say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's, you get the variance. And that's where I'm, I personally am, I'm personally more inclined to say, this is a big deal, and the city didn't catch it, and they're so far along that, hey, we have to just keep the pedal going on this project, even though it may not. I mean, it got approved prior, so there were no objections previously to allow it to get this far. So how can we, say now all of a sudden, because of 1 foot, 12 inches, they've got to practically tear the entire roof off, the entire roof. You want it symmetrical, so it has to be the entire roof. The angles have got to be symmetrical. Otherwise, you're going to have a certain degree on one side and a more significant degree angle on the other side. And it's moving walls on both sides, the east and the west, to get that symmetrical look. So, what is our leeway? That's, I guess, my big question.
I would say that it's, the question is the variance reasonable or not? Is it too costly, right? I mean, is that, because if that's the case, then I would say then variances would be based on dollar amount to fix it or dollar amount to change something.
I understand that, but there are trade-offs between costs and mistakes.
Yeah.
Mistakes were made here, and one participant in the mistake was the city.
I also really get back to the question I asked right away, right? Once you have a permit, once you have a building permit, has the ship sailed, right? Because it seems like we are determining rules and regulations after the ship has sailed, right? That's why there's a process, so that you don't order all of the stuff. You don't finalize all the plans until but once you have a permit in hand, right? Isn't that the deal? I know when I put a fence up along our east side that has an easement in because a drainage is included, and the city showed up on the day that the fence was going up, wondering if it was a good idea for us to put the fence up, and I'm like, we have a permit. That's the idea behind a permit. You're permitted to do this, right? So, David, I really like your interpretation of process here, because from my standpoint, once we hand over the permit, I understand that mistakes were made, but once the permit, and if it's not a structural problem where the building's going to fall down, blah, 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 right? I could see where there would be some changes that could be required if they were found, but that's not the case here, right? This is a permit that was provided, and now we're going through a process of a variance for something that's already been permitted.
Well, and I would also then add, at what point would they have had to, like, what if nothing had ever happened, no one brought forth this issue, and now the people are living in the home and it's out of compliance? Like, where's the cutoff of when we can stop the process?
I'll make one more comment. If you go back to the 3 questions, before this was brought up by the neighbor, those 3 questions were answered yes. It made it to that point where it was being built. And we're going to change the response to those questions over 12 inches.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so lots of thoughts and questions floating around there. I think your discussion has really been excellent, commissioners. I'll try to address a few things that I heard asked, and maybe my colleagues here can also chime in. On the question of the timing of getting the permit and then realizing, the city realizing that there was this encroachment. The building permit, 99% of the time, is exactly what you say, Commissioner. It's the permit that allows building to proceed, but it doesn't allow you to do something that is not compliant with code. So we've been in, I think during my 20-some years here at the city, I can think of a handful of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, where this sort of happened, where after a building permit was issued, someone somewhere, as building was proceeding, caught that something didn't comply, and the builder needed to correct that. And if it was a costly mistake or a costly fix, they might come in and ask for a variance or some other remedy, a code change. But that's what has to happen. A building permit doesn't allow you to do something that's in essence illegal, doesn't comply with code. So I agree with the answer earlier from our consultant planner that they either have to fix it or get a variance or get a code change. So I don't know, and that's what the law says too. I mean, there's a case law out of St. Louis Park, I believe, 10 years ago, 15, where a whole garage was built. The entire thing was built. They had to tear the whole thing down after it was built because it didn't meet code. They had a building permit in that case. It had gotten far along. So it is a tough position to be in. You're right. But I also think what was asserted earlier is correct, which is to say that it's on builders and homeowners to submit plans that comply with code. And if they don't, cities 99% of the time catch those things. In this case, it wasn't caught. I don't know the details any more than my colleagues here do, but we have to, when we know something isn't compliant, we have to make sure that it is. There was another question about timing or something like that.
You answered it when you said even though a building had been built, the garage had to all the way come down. So it doesn't matter. There's not like a statute of limitations.
So again, I think as staff, we would encourage you to focus on the criteria for variance. If they've met that criteria, recommend approval. If they haven't, then you would recommend denial, just as you always would.
Chair and Commission, just to elaborate briefly on the city attorney's comments, one item with every building permit is there is a condition of approval that you must meet all sections of code. So that is a provision in any building permit that's ever issued. So just because it wasn't compliant, there still is conditions of approval added to the permit.
Could you explain that one more time? I didn't totally get that.
So a standard caveat on any building permit is that you must still be in compliance with all sections of city ordinance or code. And that is on the bottom of every permit as they're issued. So the condition is a catch-all that every city I've ever been in has ever had on their building permits for the reasons such as this. So conditions of approval are would make the permit subject to the city ordinance regardless. That being said, as I noted, it is a catch-all in many ways as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
We've closed the public hearing, sir.
That was your time to talk.
Were you going to say something?
No, I'm just
Okay.
looking at these questions.
No,
with
yeah,
a
oh,
new
so
way- With a new, I mean, I go back to my original,
Yeah, I think so. I'm inclined to grant the variance, personally. Again, I think it goes back to mistakes were made on both sides, right? And it started with the plans that were submitted were not in compliance. And that's on the builder and the designer. And then whoever at the city level reviewed them didn't catch that, and that's on the city. I think I go back to Commissioner Elg, what you said, we're talking about a foot, and as a homeowner, right, I feel that foot, right? Like but I don't think that it deviates from comprehensive plan. I do find that it's relatively reasonable.
I would
So,
agree.
I think, I think in this case, right, like my personal feelings are I would be inclined to grant the variance.
I would too, and I would add, let's look at the three questions again. Is this proposal consistent with the comprehensive plan? It was approved. It got built. At that point, it was believed to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. It may be 1 foot larger now. Does that make it any different? Has that changed the scale of the house? It looks pretty much the same, I'm sure, by all standards. Still knowing it would take some significant reconstruction. But, and then, is it reasonable? Yeah, maybe if it was 3 feet, if they were asking for 3 feet, we might say that's not reasonable. But can there be some give here that, 12 inches is not, a huge amount. Number 3, it's not unique to the property. Yeah, they chose to go from side to side. That was their decision, not a decision I would have made, but there's nothing unique. They've got the biggest property on that block. But the first 2, I have to say, we can have some question there. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? Well, it was a foot ago, and they're asking for a variance. Everybody asks for a variance in this situation. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable variance, so I would be more inclined to support it as well. Again, if it was, they were pushing up to the borders by, like a foot, yeah, that'd be a different story, but.
I have one more comment.
Commissioner Swalby.
Well, in my opinion, what we're talking about here is a foot of the eave, not a foot of the main house, not the whole roof. I don't believe for a minute the whole roof would have to be redone. But it's not in compliance, and I believe that the builder should do what he can in the most practical way to take a foot off of that eave. That's what I believe. And I would vote to not approve this.
I would agree with that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I agree. The plans originally were not compliant, and it states on the bottom of all the documents per our planner that they need to be compliant. So it got through and it got caught. That's like saying, oh, I can rob the bank if I don't get caught. But it got caught, and it should be made compliant. It is awful. I feel bad that you're going to have to redo the roof. We had an entire building we had to move 2 or 3 feet back years ago because of this. We're not having to move any walls with this application. We do not need to touch the foundation. It is just the roof on one side. I do feel like you could re-engineer the trusses somehow on that one side, just enough. We're not impacting mechanical, electrical, it's just the overhang, and they're very generous overhangs on the design of the house. I find it hard to believe that walking by this and seeing the human eye is going to take 12 inches off and say, well, the design doesn't look great. I just disagree with that. The plight of the builder and the landowner is not due to unique circumstances. That lot, you tore down everything, and it's a big lot, and it's built to the edges. I do feel like it alters the character of the area. It makes the homes closer together, and that's one thing we've been trying to prevent in that R3A. So, and if you look at question number 4, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. I get it. It's gut-wrenching. But that plans are non-compliant.
But that's why they ask for variances.
Right.
And they have the right to do so.
They do, and
And it's an
in my opinion, is they don't meet the criteria for a variance based on that.
All right, anyone else? Further discussion? I'm going to ask Director Sharp to call a roll call vote.
We haven't had a motion yet.
Actually, we need a motion. You're right.
You sure do, Chair. We'll bring,
Let me, right, yes.
we'll bring up
Let me,
the,
first of
Who
all,
wants to make
sorry,
a
I forgot my
motion?
process. Can I get a motion, please?
He's on this game today.
No motions? I'll move. I can do that. So I would move that we direct staff to prepare a planning commission report and recommendation for approval with appropriate findings, with appropriate findings reflecting a recommendation of approval on the application for review and adoption at the next planning commission meeting. It's going to go one way or the other. So there we go. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Elk. Now, Director Sharp, would you take us through a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ankeny.
Deny.
Commissioner Planton.
Nay.
Commissioner Schwalbe.
Nay.
Commissioner Severson.
Nay.
Commissioner Elg.
Yes.
Commissioner Venoy.
Aye.
Chair Cameron.
Aye. With that, the motion fails.
that's right, Chair. So now I would recommend you ask for another motion, making a recommendation the other direction.
Yep.
Yep.
Anyone?
I'm sorry, could you?
I can make this motion too.
Yes,
No.
Chair, you can. So just procedurally, so everyone's clear, that motion was to direct staff to prepare a draft report and
Approval.
recommendation of approval. It failed. So we still need to prepare that report, and we need direction from you. So the
So now
chair
we're-
should ask for a motion to direct us.
I'm going to make a motion to direct staff to prepare a report and recommendation with appropriate findings reflecting a recommendation of denial on the application for review and adoption at the next planning commission meeting. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Looy. Director Sharp.
Commissioner Ankeny.
Approve.
Commissioner Planton.
Approved.
Commissioner Schwalbe.
Approve.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Elg.
No.
Commissioner Venoy.
Nay.
Chair Cameron.
Nay. That motion passes. So we will look for that report and recommendation in our next meeting on the consent agenda. Thank you, members of the public, for your participation in this meeting tonight. And that concludes the public hearing portion of our meeting. Other items? Director Sharp.
Moving to the agenda. Thank you for your patience. In terms of development activities, the commission has likely seen some of the fences going up at 641 Lake. That project is still not issued a demolition permit as of this afternoon, but they have started by putting the fences up around the project. Their plan right now is to demolish a portion of the building, but it is not substantial enough that it required planning commission review. So you may recall this site as the former Caribou site, I believe, is what it has been.
The Carish
labeled.
building?
Yeah, the Carish building. As soon as that permit is issued, we will be making sure that that goes out in the weekly newsletter and informing the residents, because it has gotten a fair amount of interest. The proposal is to make the building slightly taller, but still within compliance standards of the district. So the section being demolished is the oldest section of the building and less than 50% of the total building area. Other than that, there are no significant applications to report.
Excellent, thank you. Next meeting is May 5th. And with that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Severson. Second?
Second, Planton.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, the motion carries, and we are adjourned.